of the Cultural Museum of African Arts. Some of the pieces within the collection, which is pretty large, which has taken me. I'm the creator and founder of the Cultural Museum of African Art, which comprises over 3,000 artifacts within the collection. It's taken me over 50 years to this collection and put it together. And thanks to the incredible help and support over the years of Stuart and Maureen of MDS, they've been an enormous help. We're looking to go into a new site located in Brooklyn. It's a historic site called Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration, which was created by Robert Kennedy back in like 1961, I think it was. And so we're going to be honored to go there. That's going to be our home for the next couple of years. And then we're planning to go into a brand new building for the museum to tell the stories of Africa and the artifacts. My mission in life is to put voice to the artifacts so they can explain to the public why they were created, what their applications are, how they're utilized, and what their importance is from an educational perspective. Because what we've also done, and we will continue to do, is we've written an educational program that goes along with each piece, each artifact that we have working with the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and they're a big supporter of ours, where we go into schools, colleges, cultural centers, senior citizen centers, and we actually present the history of Africa through the artifacts. So we try to make it fun and interesting. And we have pieces in the collection that are over 4,000 years old, going back to the Egyptian, the Nubian, and the Axum Empire, which we now know as Ethiopia, and many other empires of Africa. And the real purpose of the museum is to educate, to bring all of us together, in particular people of African descent, because of the 400 years of slavery that people of African descent have endured, and the purposeful horrors that they lived through, similar to, in different ways, to our brothers of the Jewish faith and other peoples and cultures and ethnicities through the world. And horribly, even to this day, people have been taken away from their beliefs and their cultures, or knowing who they are. This is a particular horror that's happened to people of African descent. And one of the things that we want to do is to make everybody aware of the African contribution to the world. Like, it's one of the things I do in the seminars and educational sessions that I do. I make sure to tell everyone that's in the audience that all peoples and cultures and ethnicities should be extremely proud of their heritage. They should make a point of knowing what their heritage is, and knowing what their contributions are. Because if we dig just beneath the surface, you don't have to dig far, you'll realize that all people of all kinds and types have contributed amazingly to the world and what we are today, and to make this a better place. And people of African descent has done that as well, but many of them don't realize it because of the past. So we take that burden upon ourselves to educate, and it's our firm belief that through education and sharing knowledge with everyone, that's the power that brings people together in mutual respect and dignity. So that's what we do. We put together one of the most powerful collections of African artifacts in existence in the world, and thanks to people like Maureen and Stu, we're going to make this happen in a real big way in New York City. It's a long, arduous road, in a trail that we've traveled. Uh, and I'm enormously grateful to Maureen and Stuart. I can't put it in words, really. Uh, uh, but the thanks goes out to them every day, and and I thank them now for having us be able to share with your group and the people of MDS, which I know a number of them going way back, because my background is in technology, and luckily that's what brought Stuart and I and Maureen together many years ago. So and the bond is stronger than ever. So with that, I'm going to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a few pieces from the collection, and I just picked them at random, no real special reason. And I want this to be interactive because we only have less than an hour. And if you have any particular questions, I want you to stop me and ask, or put it in the chat so Samantha will see them and stop me, so I can address those particular questions. And I want to make this interesting for you, so I want it to be interactive. So it's not about whether we get through the various pieces I've selected to talk about. It's more important that we just talk and develop an understanding, because we can do this many times more in the future. As long as you're interested and you want this to happen, I'll make sure it does. And with that said, I'm going to start talking about the first piece that I grabbed. And this particular, I don't know how well, let me know if you can see it well. Can you visualize this? Can you see this? Because on my screen, I'm just a little indentation in the corner of the screen. I want to make sure you can see it.
Just move back a foot. Move back. That's
Move
good.
the face.
Yeah.
Move, Eric, move the face a little bit. Move the face to the front.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's good. Yeah. Y'all
Yes.
correct me.
Yeah. We put you as a showcase, so you're the biggest one on the screen. Don't worry.
This is from the Mende people of Sierra Leone. This is what they call a Bundu helmet. And this is from the women's secret society known as the Sande Society. Now, in Africa, going back thousands or hundreds of years, their school systems are not similar to what we know in the Western Hemisphere or other parts of the world. Their educational systems were through what they call secret societies. So you had to join to be a member, and even probably more accurately, went from birth at a certain age, very similar to, like, again, our Jewish brothers and sisters. You had to go through an initiation ceremony, and to be educated, that took a number of years. And then you went through an initiation ceremony, and then you became a real member of the society, and you stayed a member for life. And that's how you were respected, because people knew if you were a member or graduate, if you will, of that society. You were taught many things about culture, how to care for other people, how to care for your family, how to heal, do medicine, how to do agriculture, to take care of crops, for the men, how to hunt, how to build, and you can go on and on. As far and most importantly, in all the societies, you were taught how to be a good citizen or a good person, and to have high ethical values. And one of the things I love about talking about African art and the artifacts is that when we get into this, it's some of the things that many of us, and in particular people of African descent, we've lost. I'll be very honest with you, lost track of. And that's why I say, by educating people about this, it can only make for a better society and understanding and bringing us together. This particular helmet was worn by the head mistress of the society. Now, those girls that were taken into what they called the bush or the forest or little villages, which were actually little schools and universities where they were isolated for up to years, They were taught everything they know that is possible to make them highly educated according to the culture and to be good citizens and caregivers and protectors. And when they came from the village and were presented back to the, the sector where they lived, they were headed up in a procession by the head mistress, who wore a helmet similar to what you're looking at now, with an outfit of raffia and garments that she wore all the way down to her feet. She almost looked like a spirit coming out of the forest. And she led those girls in graduation to back to the people of the village or sector where she lived. So this is, the museum has a wide collection of these types of helmets. They're all different and unique. And as you can see, this one is a pretty powerful lady because she has actually serpents coiled on the top of her head looking upwards. So this is one of the items.
What
I have a
is it
question.
made from? What is it made out of?
Oh, excuse me. It's made out of wood. This is wood and a couple of rare beads. Like in the snakes, they have these rare beads that are on their eyes. So, but it's completely wood. I'll turn it upside down so you can see inside. I don't know how well you can see, but you can see. This is carved from one particular tree trunk. So needless to say, the craftsmanship of the carver is superb to have done something like this. And I'll turn it around so you can see it and get an idea of the craftsmanship that's involved in it.
And how old is it?
This here particular piece is about 150 years old.
I have a question.
Yes.
How did they decide who was initiated, or could everyone be initiated if they
Every
wanted to?
village, it was a requirement for them to go to school and be initiated. That was their education. It's like when we're here in New York City, and when we're like I don't know, was it 4 or 5 years old, and we go to kindergarten or whatever, we start education. They had to go to the secret society and they had to be educated, and so it was a requirement. Now, it's a good question if anyone could abstain, but they didn't want to. That was part of their culture, and they knew to get ahead, they had to be a member. So if they later on left that village and moved up higher in society and government in Sierra Leone, because this is where this particular item is from, they knew in order to get ahead, it's like you going and you working for MDS and you tell somebody, well, I graduated from Yale, I graduated from Notre Dame. That might give you a couple of brownie points or kudos to maybe move up in the company. Well, for them, they had to say, I'm a member of the Sunday Society. And that would open doors for them in Sierra Leone. And you find out with all the different cultures of Africa, we have pieces from, there are 54 countries in Africa, and we have pieces from everyone, and you'll find these stories of culture and education and secrets. I always tell people Africa is a continent of secrets, and even all the Africans don't know all the secrets. I found that out in my many years dealing with the African art. Yeah, and what's so amazing about it is there's always something new to learn, but it's amazing. Any more questions about this piece? Okay, we're going to go to the next one. This is a incredibly important. Let me know if you can see it. I got to position myself again.
Move it up a little bit. Yep, you're good.
That's good?
Yep.
This is an incredibly important piece from the Edo people of Benin. And they're very important. Now, this is a little bit heavier, to say the least. This is a bronze piece. And this is from Benin, which was one of the important powers from Africa in pre-colonial Africa. And when I say pre-colonial, I'm saying like around the 1500s and so forth, when the Benin, what we call the Benin Kingdom, Benin, which is formerly known as Dahomey, was a power in Africa. And that's one of the kingdoms that was first introduced to the Europeans when they came to Africa as being a place to go, the go-to place, so to speak, where they had organization, riches, jewels, and valuables. But they also had a culture and they had a hierarchy of society. And the head of the society were the obas. Now, the oba in translation means king. They were the people who ruled, and it was a class. It was a family, and interesting in African culture, what you find out, which we strive for liberation of all sexes and orientations in the United States. Interesting, back in Benin or Dahomey, even though there was an Oba who had power, he had a royal court under him, but he also had a wife, and his wife had basically equal power to him. So what you will find out, women in Africa, in ancient Africa, wielded a lot of power. In fact, some of the women were queens and actually headed up armies and things like that too. But that's discussions for the future. Like right now we're talking about this guy. So he's pre what we call punitive period. Now, what do I mean by punitive period? The punitive period is back in like 1879 when the British invaded Africa, in particular Dahomey, because of dispute that arose related to trade with Africa, and this resulted in, after battles being fought, is that the kingdom of Benin or Dahomey was overthrown. And what happened, the Oba or the king was taken prisoner and he was put in exile. And one of the things that is being debated in controversy to this present day was the spoils of the Oba's palace, which were these series of bronze, which represent the family hierarchy and ancestry of the Oba's families, the rulers' families. They were documented, if you will, in historically preserved in bronze. And this is one of those bronze pieces. Now, most of the bronze pieces that came out of Benin ended up in the British Museum. But not all of them. There were certain ones that escaped. There were certain ones that the people hid, buried, who knows what they did, to keep them out of the hands of the British. But this is one that escaped. And fortunately for me, has ended up in this museum so we could share it with the public. It's incredibly beautiful, incredibly crafted. It's developed in a special casting method that was developed in Africa called the lost wax method. It's a method of casting, how they casted some of these amazing bronzes. This happens to be one of them. It's incredibly old. In fact, it's, in my opinion, it's pre-punitive period. Now, ones that scholars make all the fuss about is those ones that ended up in primarily England, but they also ended up in Belgium and Germany and some other countries as well. But this is actually one that's even older than some of those. So let me just turn it around so you can get an idea. I guess I'm exhibiting my strength because this thing is pretty heavy, but I'm managing.
And where was this originally found? Like, where did the homie live?
And what we now know is present day Nigeria. Okay. But they're a sector of the country to the west that was actually Benin, but it's really Nigeria. But they was like the elite, if you will.
Yeah.
It's Nigeria. So this is quite an incredible piece. We're proud to have it. We're going to share it with everyone, and I just wanted to show this.
And who usually? So this is like the king, right?
This is actually one of the kings.
So who usually crafted it for them? Like.
Oh, they have their own court. It's very, when I study Africa and the history, it's very, very similar to Asian history, very similar to European history. As far as power is concerned, and how power is wielded, and how it's crafted and created to represent people or to rule people, however you want to say it. And in those royal courts, those people who wielded power or control, they had artisans that worked for them, just like in Europe, just like in King Henry VIII's court. It's no difference. In royal Egypt, they had special people who were skilled of the highest level of skills, who belonged to guilds, who this is what they did. This was their craft. And they taught other people how to do it. And it usually was family structures that lasted for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, who passed these skills on from father to son, from grandfather, you name it. And this is how something like this was crafted, came to be, so.
Is it hollow inside?
Yeah. Hi, how you doing?
Hey, you're all right. I'm from the UK.
Hi.
Yes, man, you are on point. I'm from Nigeria, but I'm the UK now.
Yes, okay.
So you are on point. You are on point.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a Yoruba man from Nigeria, so I know what you're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice one.
Yeah. Okay. So any other question? I'll put this down and we'll go to another piece. Okay, tell me if you can see this.
Yes, we can see that. You might want to back up a little bit
Yes.
because I think this one's big.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it.
Is
got
that
it.
Perfect.
okay?
Is it heavy?
No, this is wood. This is made from wood. Solid, hard wood from Africa. Probably what they call ironwood. Because there are all different types of wood in Africa, you could imagine. But I think this is ironwood, which they like to carve in many times because it's a very dense, hard, heavy wood that could withstand the elements. And this one is of a Kuba king. And this is royal because in the same thing, this is from the Congo, the Kuba people of the Congo. And they had a long reign in hereditary lineage of royal families that went all the way back to the Bushong people of the Congo, which they say were the original people who where the Kuba people, Kuba, originated. And they have a very long tradition, lasting hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 years, of casting that's the wrong word, of carving their rulers out of wood. So in order how they memorialize their rulers in history is they would carve an effigy of that ruler. And that ruler, this would stay in his palace as a symbol of his might and his power. And upon his death, these would be sent to a vault still within the palace, but a special room where his ancestors laid. And so forth, he would lay too. And then one of his sons would take over. And then that's the tradition of carving an effigy of the son, the ruler, would go forward to the next generation. But you see what he's holding in his hand is like a mantle of his power, this piece right here. And he's sitting on his throne in passive strength, if you will, if you could see his expression, um, of quiet resistance and force. That's how I put it. You know, so
what's the part at the top? What is it at the top?
that's actually a crest that he wears, and it's actually made out of cloth. I mean, not this is wood, but in reality, it was made from cloth. And the kuba are some of the weaves some of the most beautiful cloths, all handmade, hand woven, no machines in Africa. So the royal cloths of Cuba are just outrageous. If you see them in their garments, in their weaves, and the Cuba are famous for that. So one of the things that we have resident within the museum, we have a large amount of Cuba cloths that we're going to share with the public. And you'll see how beautiful these things are, and they're royal. They were kept by the royal family. And we also have some very important Cuba statues like this. We have another one, but it's quite large. I can't hold it up like this. It's quite large, and that's from one of the recent kings that passed, that we actually have that in the collection as well. So, but this is a very, very beautiful and gorgeous one, and very serious, and I just wanted to share that with you. And I'll turn this around so you can see what it looks like as well. Okay,
is that from one block of wood?
Yes. What?
Yeah, is that from one block of wood that's carved?
Yes, one block of wood.
Oh,
one block of wood. Africans don't believe in glue. Asian Africans, they don't glue.
We ain't gluing.
So that sort of tells you the skill of the carvers. I mean, being a carver in Africa, in ancient Africa, it was a career. It was a lifelong passion. And if you were really, really good, you could end up working at the royal court. And those rulers in the royal court, they knew how to have commissioned these very important pieces to represent them in their power. And when the people came in to their court on various ceremonies and occasions, they would see these pieces, and that just added to the mystique of the ruler in his power. And that's how they used it. Okay. Okay, so the next piece. Okay, talking about secret societies, I'm going to go to another piece. This is also from the Congo. This particular piece, can everybody see it okay?
Yep.
This is from, and I just wanted to talk about, because I mentioned early on with the Mende helmet from the Women's Secret Society. This is a piece from a male secret society. And in this case, it's the Bayaka people, also of the Congo, but they're a different group and sect. And this is from a secret society of the Bayaka, who were basically pastoral people, but proud people, and with a very strong culture and foundation. They're hunters. As you can see, this person has this sash on his back, which symbolizes that he's a hunter. But this is a piece that symbolizes the Bayaka in initiation. And for the young boys, what Bayaka by definition means is strong male. So they taught the young African boys to be strong males. And when they graduate, pieces like this are carved to honor them. And in certain cases, these pieces become the initiation pieces that they keep for all their lives. Now, what the Bayaka also do that they're noted for, which I didn't bring out one to show you, maybe in a future session, they make these incredible masks that are in museums all over the world uh, that they wear in for initiation as well, and they wear in dance ceremonies. And before someone asks me, because this is a question I get asked quite often, so I'm going to ask it before you can, is why is his nose bent? Did you notice that? The nose?
I was going to ask that.
I just said that actually.
Believe it or not, now I've been collecting African artifacts going on 50 years, right, for the museum. And I don't have a real answer. That's why I posed, I threw the question out there. It's something from hereditary. What I know, it's hereditary. What I know, it goes back to their creation, because the Bayaka, they come from pygmies. They are actually very small people, but they carve these huge and beautiful things. You know, so this nose, if you will, goes back to their story of creation. Every African people and group, they all have a peculiar story of creation, how they came to be. And that's amazing into itself if you start getting into these stories of creation of the different groups and ethnic groups in Africa, which there are hundreds and hundreds of them, to tell you the truth. You could break up the 54 countries, and then when you go into the countries, they are different in various ethnic groups that are quite large. And many of them carve some of the most incredible art or artifacts because they were utilized not as art, and they didn't look upon them as art. They looked upon them as implements of life to explain their existence, their religions, and their social systems and values. That's what the artifacts represent. They also represent the rites of passage when they go to the next life. Most African groups don't believe that you die and then that's it. They believe that you transcend and you go to a different form or to a different life. And that's another whole discussion as far as that. In the case of the Bayaka, like I said, who originated certainly from pygmies, that's where the nose comes from, and they're beautiful helmets and masks. And one of the things I am proud to say is that the museum, we have one of the best collections of Bayaka masks in existence. And that's just, I think, out of luck. When I started getting into this back in around 1971, that's one of the things I focused on. And I didn't realize at the time, because I didn't know enough, to realize when I started collecting these things that they would become so rare. So we're proud to have them, but also these statues typify them. And this is of the Bayaka Secret Society, and it's so important because it makes the statement by their name that strong men in Africa are very important. And they have to live up to a certain credo and a value system that so the villages and their family could respect them. And also so they can be protectors of their family and the village and the community. And that's what this represents.
Were they only hunters, or did they have a lot of different jobs?
Different jobs, but they're basically pastoral. So they're hunters, and they go into the forest and bring back implements for building and protection. And of course, there's a whole nother discussion on weapons in Africa that, you know, maybe one day we can address with you. I mean, because the weapons are incredible that come out of Africa that these same people make for hunting, but also for protection, you know, from rivalry of different peoples and ethnic groups, because all of that's part of the African story as well. So, but the Bayaka, they're quite an interesting group. So with that said, I'm doing better than I thought I was. How are we doing on time?
It's 5:45, so I think you have time for one more probably.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about is you guys going to find, now this is heavy, but you guys are going to find this interesting. This is quite heavy. I don't know how well you can see it. Can you see this?
Yeah, I would back up just a
Yeah.
smidge. Yeah.
Something is blocking my screen. Let me just get rid of it.
Wow.
Now,
Yeah.
this is an incredible, now this is definitely made from ironwood because it's very, very heavy, very dense, very powerful, very strong. And this goes back to what we call the colonial period, or some people call it the Cologne period of Africa. And the Cologne period goes back to from the early 15, maybe the 1600s, up into like the 1900s, if you would. And this particular piece is from Mali, and it's carved by a very, very important ethnic or tribal group in Mali called the Bambara, or they're also known as the Bamana people, and they carve some incredible stuff. And one of the things they're known for that you might have seen in museums or places, what we call the chihuahuas. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a chihuahua. It's an African antelope that has these big horns that come up on the top, and then a sprouting crest on its back, and then small antlers down on the front, and it represents the antelopes of Mali, which are revered. And the Bambara are very strongly pastoral people who work the land and the in the harvest and so on and so forth, for the life cycles of life for sustenance. And one of the things I didn't say, which is powerful and important to be said throughout Africa, which is represented in the art in many, many pieces in this collection that we haven't even touched on today, of course, is that the power of woman in African art is enormous. Way before the days that we know of women live in the United States, which came in like the early 1900s of the United States, if you will. It was always in Africa. Women carry incredibly heavy load in Africa in what they do and what they contribute to the family and society and the community at large. And the dichotomy and the relationship between men and women in Africa is very precise. There are certain things that the women do that's quite intense and hard and difficult, yet they do it with such grace. And there's things that the men do as far as protectors of the woman in the family. And they work in this harmonious relationship that's amazing, that you see throughout Africa. And it's also exhibited in the art. So it's one of the things we do when we tell the stories of the art, and one of the reasons I love so much maternity figures, as I call them, when they show a woman in a family setting, or they show a woman holding a child, is very important to me in most people who see them, because it shows the strength and power of woman in Africa. And like I alluded to earlier, women actually led armies in Africa. I mean, they picked up the sword when they had to, and led the men. When I talked about the the Oba piece and how powerful that is and how powerful he was, the Oba's bodyguards were women. They called them the Amazon women. We actually have swords in the collection that come from them, and they were fierce. And the male soldiers never took them for granted. They gave them the utmost respect, which they earned and deserved. And
Eric, I love it. I love this part. I love it. Yes, women.
well, it's the truth. I try to tell the truth. Women in Africa play a major role, major, about the story of Africa. And one of the things I talk about too is like Africa, according to the scientists and the paleontologists and the archaeologists and everything else, they all tell us Africa is the cradle of civilization. We all come from Africa. And I actually believe that. And that makes all of us brothers and sisters. And that's why it's so important to talk about Africa and the people of Africa and the creation and the history of Africa. Because you'll find as the deeper you dig into it, you find out we're all related. There's no need for this hostility and everything that we have between all groups in the world. It makes absolutely no sense, and we can learn so much and give so much to each other and make for better life for ourselves and our children. And one of the things you learn from studying African art or artifacts is that, you learn that, and it only makes especially for our young Black men and males in the United States who are lightning rods for trouble and attacked by the police and everything else. One of the things you learn is that, and they need to learn, is how important they are, and how they should demand respect by knowing their history and who they are. So, and you get that by studying the artifacts, and also even a police officer who may be ignorant, if he had a chance to sit down and learn some of these things, he would realize that, hey, I'm attacking someone who might be a kin of mine through 6 degrees of separation. So it's so important, the stories that come out. That's why our educational program is so incredibly important, to educate people, because everything is about education. And that gets us back to this piece. This is from the colonial period, as I said. This is a gendarme. It's incredibly carved with its exquisite detail by Malian carvers. And when they carved this piece during the time of colonialization in Africa, they carved this in sort of jest of the white gendarmes who were overseers of theirs. They didn't do it in hostility or anything. It was like a pun, because almost to say, oh, they think they're in charge, but they're really not in charge, and they still had their culture and their ways of life to preserve. So, but to state, this is an amazing carving, but it's carved with a note of jest, but also a note of respect in the way it's carved. It has both, So this is going to be something that will be coming to the MDS office, and I'm going to suggest to Stu and Maureen that they put it near the entrance so it can watch the punctuality of everyone that comes to work every day, in jest. So so it's a very, need I add, it's a very, very rare item.
When was this? You said this piece was colonial, but do you know when exactly? Because I mean, he's wearing it looks like a business shirt.
Oh no, well he's coming from the Cologne period, so this is like the late 19th century.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
definitely. Yeah. So that's all the pieces I plan to talk about. I could bring out more, but I'd like to know if there's any more questions and answers.
We see so many more in the background, Eric.
I could go on forever, you know. Want me to grab another one, or you want to talk, or you have questions?
Stuart?
I have a question here.
Okay.
Oh, I have a quick question. I apologize. What made you interested in collecting this? What started it for you in terms of a hobby, becoming a hobby, or I'm just curious because it's very hard to find people really passionate about things. And it seems like you have real passion on it. I'm just curious to see what drove that.
Of course, you know, I've been asked this question many times, but what got me interested was, believe it or not, a love that was instilled in me by my father, who was not a collector, didn't really know anything about African art, but he was studious, and he liked to study and to read, and he loved history. So, and my father was born in the British West Indies, Barbados. He came to this country when he was 17 years old. So, when he eventually met his wife, who became my mother in this country, and then we came along, and I'm the youngest of 3 children, so we're all separated by a year apart. My sister being the middle child, and my brother being the oldest, who's a commercial artist and a musician. My sister's an educator, and she was a school principal in the New York City school system. And I became an electrical engineer and a collector, even though I didn't realize it at the time, but I was actually collecting. I got into African art because my father instilled in all of us this love of Africa and where we came from. And he felt we needed to know that in order to be well-grounded, because he said everyone needs to know where they come from and what where they emanated from in life, so they can have a firm foundation in order to determine where they want to go and what they want to be. And he was aghast when he came to this country, in particular New York City, and he found out that there was no education at all about Africa. You know, there was everything else in history, but nothing about Africa. And in fact, everything that he saw relative to Africa was negative, you know. So, and he felt that would impart on us and impute on us a negativity about ourselves, which he didn't want us to have, because he felt that would stunt our growth. I tend to agree with him, but he developed this curiosity in me. Like I said, he wasn't a collector. So, but what it did inspire us to do, we were always proud. We were always taught not to think we were better than anybody else by both my mother and my father. But we were also taught to know that no one else was better than us, that we were equal. And we were also taught to believe that you could succeed and accede to the highest heights if you worked hard and studied and earned it. You could achieve it. So we all believe that. And for me and my sister and brother, that pretty much was the case. I mean, we believed in hard work, and we believed that it would pay off. Now, yes, I encountered racism and everything in my life, in my young life, but I always had a way of having it roll off of me, because I just wasn't affected by it. And the reason I wasn't affected, because I always knew who I was. I always knew who my ancestors were. I always knew their gifts to the world and their power. and I always respected other people. And what ended up happening in me is I developed this love for other people, regardless of what skin color what they were, and regardless of what they believe. You know, it was all about how they treated and respected me, and if they were good, if the person was a good person or a bad person. And if I determined they were really a good person and a good spirit and a good soul, I couldn't help but to like them. I think that that's what made me so good at sales when I entered sales later in life. I started out at AT&T as a network designer, and I was that for a number of years, and I did incredibly well and made a lot of money, and I had a lot of the biggest accounts in the media, NBC and CBS and ABC TV. I used to be one of the main people for them from AT&T. I made AT&T a lot of money in my lifetime, and but I got rewarded, you know, with bonuses and this and that, and that's how I started buying African art. Because I always started buying the African art because I had a connection because of the love of Africa, and because of certain things that I would involve with as far as technical societies and stuff like that, I started getting introduced to some really significant people who happened not to be a people of color or African American. They were white people, but some of them were incredibly interested in giving and sharing. And I found out from many of them who were colleagues that they collected African art. And to be very honest with you, how I started collecting African art was through them, because they shared the information. I was incredibly curious, and I wanted to know, how did you acquire this piece or that piece? When I went to their homes and I saw the stuff in there, and I went to my relatives' homes or friends' homes, no African art. It was like the desert. I mean, it just didn't exist. and that was because of the ignorance they had of themselves. You see, so it just re-emphasized what I already knew. And I said, so I started collecting African art, and friends of mine directed me to Sotheby's and Christie's, and I started going to the auctions. And this was in the early 70s, and I started bidding on some of these pieces, and I had the money at that time in my life to purchase them, you know. And I started doing that and amassing a collection. And every time I bought, you know, to be honest with you, people in my family thought I was nuts. They said, what are you going to do if a storm comes, or you have a rainy day, or things go bad, or you get sick, or what, you know, what are you going to do with this stuff? It's not worth anything, you know. And you know, I had to stop and pause and think for a while whether they were right or not. I knew I loved the stuff, but that wasn't the question. You know, should I continue my collection? So I had to think about it for a while, and then I finally came to the realization that the hell with it. So it's only money, you know. I love this stuff, and I'm learning from it because I made it a point of learning about every piece I ever acquired, you know. And that's where the idea for the educational thing and everything came from. And but you know, and now the museum is at a point, thanks to people like Maureen and Stu and other people on my board of directors, where the museum is at a point where it's about to really take off and be an important institution in New York City and the world. And I have a lot of people to thank for that, especially Maureen and Stu. And it's a dream that we all have and share together, you know, to make this happen so we all could be proud and it can educate all of us.
Thank you.
Eric, this is Stuart. I just wanted to thank, we're coming at the end of the our allotted time. I wanted to thank you very much for the education, for presenting these pieces. I know I've seen them before, but I learned more about them when you talked about it. I want to say I believe in your collection and the museum thoroughly. I understand what it is to have history that goes back over 5,000 years. I think the African youth of America need to know that they didn't start at the Civil War. Their culture goes back over 4,000, 5,000, if not more years. And just to reinforce what you said, we all came from the same place. I did my DNA testing at National Geographic and also IBM, and they came back and they told me I came from Tanzania. It
I'm
just
not
happens,
surprised.
it just happens to be 80,000 years ago, but that's when I came. 80,000 years ago, my genes originated in Tanzania. So we all come from the same place. Again, thank you, Eric. I hope to have you on more often, and I can't wait till the museum to open, and we're all going to be visiting it when it does. So thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to add one thing. We're at the end of the year, so if any of you are looking to burn a little bit of cash and want to make a donation that you can get a tax deduction on for the museum, we're a full 501c3 nonprofit, so you can claim it on your taxes. So it's just a thought to put in the back of your mind.
Good thought.
And
Good.
Samantha, you close it out.
Yes, Samantha, thank you for putting it
Samantha,
together.
thank you. Oh,
And
Eric, that was
Eddie,
wonderful.
thank
It
you
was
as well.
so
Thank-
like lightning.
Yeah. I hope I'm saying this right. Kareen, is that it? How do you say it?
Yes, Kareen.
Yeah. So she would love to speak with you more, Eric. So I'll do a quick introduction with you guys, so you guys can talk more.
Okay.
But yeah, I would love to do this again. I think it was very informative. So I will be in contact with you and Eddie to